Great, thank you, Bob. Actually, the first thing is, I'm not going to talk about that at all. You are here under false pretenses. Because weeks ago, when I had to put in my talk description, I thought that's what I was going to talk about. But how interesting that the daily word turns out to be exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm not going to be talking about coming back to balance. I'm going to be talking about coming back to your center. So our theme this month is staying centered. And when I sat down to actually write what I was going to say this morning, I thought, centered, what is centered? What does that mean? And instantly what arose for me is, it is that true, authentic part of me. Right? That part that came in when I was born, that part that has always stayed there, but not the part of me that I necessarily have access to 24/7, right? So what happens is we're born, we have experiences, and many of these experiences, especially the ones that happen between 0 and 6, change us. We create what we call the adapted self, or a false self. I like adapted self, conditioned self, better than false self, because it is still part of us, but it's not that true essence part of us, right? So what we do is we develop ways to live in the world. This is the way this system is set up. So we develop ways to live in the world. We develop adaptations, behaviors, core beliefs about ourselves and the world, which serve us in the moment to keep going, but those very behaviors, those very core beliefs, I should say adaptive beliefs about ourselves, about the world, are what then begin to trip us up when we're adults. And those, as we gain those, we get further and further away from our core self. So, make sense? Can you relate to that? So that core self, that staying centered, is coming back on a journey, which I think is what the spiritual journey is that journey back to that original, authentic self that we are. And when I arrive there 24/7, I'll let you know. I assure you, I'm definitely not there yet. Yeah. So, but I know this journey, I know this place, and there was a time when I didn't know this place. I didn't know. All I knew was my adapted self. Let me tell you, it was a life of chaos and pain and drama and oh my goodness, I could have had my very own soap opera about all the things that life brought to me, and all the people who were so mean to me, and all the things that happened to me that were just so terrible. But what I didn't realize is that all those things were the keys to lead me back to my essential self. So when I talk about myself today, I'm going to try and keep with myself means that true, authentic, centered self. And I was debating back and forth. Is it the divine self? Is it just the divine self? I'm not 100% on that. I have to sit with that. I think my current working theory is that it is the divine self with the integrated parts of me that split off to be the conditioned, programmed self. Right? Make sense? Okay, you're all with me? Okay, beautiful. So I loved, so staying centered is our quote, and is our theme. Our quote is by Myrtle Fillmore, one of our co-founders. And she says, "The power that created you is always at work to restore you and to maintain you in wholeness." Let's read that again. The power that created you is always, always, not sometimes, not occasionally, always at work to restore you. So I take that to mean restore you to that centered self and to maintain you in wholeness. Yeah, breathe that one in. Breathe that one in. So when I read this quote, that's what inspired me to completely change what I was planning to talk about, which was this idea of balance, and actually go much deeper into this idea of our true self, our conditioned selves, and the spiritual journey of how we get back there. So how do you know when, what are some of the clues that you know that you are in your not true self, in your conditioned self? Let me share. I have a list. Okay, number 1, saying no when you mean yes. Can anyone relate? Okay, number 2, saying yes when you mean no. Okay, how about this one? Feeling guilty when you say no. Feeling anxious when you say no. Acting against your integrity or values to please others. Not speaking up when you have something to say. See, this is my list, so I'm just sharing my list with you. Adopting another person's beliefs or ideas because you think that they are better, more advanced, greater, more spiritual, whatever, than you. Not calling out someone who has mistreated you. Accepting physical touch when you don't want it. Allowing myself to be distracted or interrupted to accommodate someone else. This one's very familiar to me. Let me tell you. It's like, line up. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. My needs are last. It's okay. It's all right. I'm good. I'm fine. I can handle it. I'm strong. Oh, good. Right? Which is the lies that I tell myself. So as not to feel the discomfort of that inner war that goes on. Not that it's a war. It's both parts of ourselves wanting to do, in a sense, or be what's right for us. And that adapted part of ourself is a beautiful part of ourself that thinks it's doing what's best. Because at one point in our lives when we were children, it was doing what's best. Right? Oh, here's a good one. I've done this one too. Giving too much of ourselves so I can be perceived as useful, or helpful, or enough. Right? Giving too much. Because what I have to give is really quite enough. Becoming overly involved in someone else's problems or issues. Any rescuers here? Oh, isn't it way easier to solve their problems over there instead of the ones that are happening right here? All right, not defining or communicating my emotional needs in relationship. Yeah. That's a really, really, really big one for me. So getting back to close, so those are all the ways in which we can sort of clue into there's something else going on here, right? And when you find yourself in, doing one of those behaviors, in one of those situations, that is life, the power that created you, right? Life, God, source, spirit, whatever it is always at work to restore you and maintain you to wholeness. Because what those behaviors are when we act against our true interests and act against ourselves. And there's a word that we use that we call that, which is boundaries. Right? So setting a boundary, having boundaries, is not about erecting these walls all around us to protect us, right? Keep people out and make sure that we're safe. The best definition of a boundary that I've found is what's okay with me and what's not okay with me. And a boundary is nothing more than what defines our own unique being in the world. It is all the things that make up who we are. Right? All the things, all the little things, including the fact that I like vanilla ice cream. So when someone comes to me and says, here, have strawberry ice cream, which is my least favorite. If I'm wanting to please them and don't want to say, I don't like strawberry ice cream, right? If I'm about to go against myself and eat strawberry ice cream, I am not honoring my boundary. It has nothing to do from the outside. It is all 100% an internal back and forth that's going on. And guess who's the one who has the power to choose? Am I going to go, I don't like vanilla ice cream, but thank you, that was very kind, right? Another part of all this is identifying what it is you don't want to feel. So I think it's rude to not accept a gift. I judge it as maybe mean to say no. Someone's trying to be nice to me and I say no. Oh, what kind of a person does that? Or a mean, horrible person, right? So this is a really simple example, but it really illustrates it. Is it landing for you? Are you getting? Yeah. And so oftentimes what we do is how do you know when you're coming up against the boundary, right? It's when you feel that feeling of guilt, that feeling of anxiety that comes up. And often what we do is I'll speak for myself. I will twist myself into a pretzel to figure out a way that seems like I'm not betraying myself, but actually is. And this happened to me just last week, 2 weeks ago. But the outcome was last week. So let me tell you what happened. My brother-in-law is flying in, my step-brother-in-law is flying in from Dubai, and my stepfather asked if he could borrow my car. My instant reaction in my body was, no, I don't want you to borrow my car. The fact of the matter is, I think people, that would be inconvenient, except it wouldn't, because I'm not going to be using my car. My car is going to be sitting in the garage because I'm going to be flying to the States the day that he arrives here. So that's not really a good enough excuse. And I thought, well, the last time he was here, he borrowed my car, he got a speeding ticket. That's true. That's true, he did. And he's not a very good driver. And I just got a brand new car. Like literally, I just got a brand new car. But when I sat with myself, the truth was, no, I don't want that. I don't want him to borrow my car. So, Brenda's on the edge of her seat. So how interesting, right? And so it was like, okay, so what is up for me, right? And it was that same, it's sort of a combination of things for me. One is, I don't matter. It makes no sense. It's not logical. My car's sitting in the garage. He needs a car. Why wouldn't I let him do that? Right? It doesn't make any sense. But my truth was, no. So I had to phone my stepdad back, and it took me a full week to gather up enough courage to say no. And I was getting ready, I was readying myself for the, well, what about your car is not gonna be used, you know, yada, 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 whatever he's gonna say to me, and I'm just gonna say no. And so I called him up, and I did it while I was driving, because then I could be like, oh, sorry, I gotta go. Now think about these things, right? And I said, you know what? It doesn't work for me. That's all I said. I didn't come up with all the reasons, because all the reasons weren't really, they were, but they weren't true. They weren't the real truth. The real truth was the answer was no. I just didn't want him to borrow my car. Didn't want to be a meanie, but. So I had a choice at that moment. Right? Do I say no, which is like super uncomfortable and anxiety? Because I'm challenging a belief I have about myself. That my needs don't matter. Right? So I had to choose to not support that belief, and instead choose my true self and what was actually true for me, as uncomfortable as it was. So I did make the phone call from the car, and my stepdad said, oh, no problem. I'm sure he'll be able to rent a car. All week, I had 10 scenarios in my head. Mental effort and time I put into trying to come up with what am I going to say if he says. I mean, ultimately, what I decided is, you know, after all that mental, you know, back and forth and sitting with it, sweating buckets, and I just decided I'm just going to stick with it doesn't work for me. I don't have to explain it. And then I came up with something which I'm going to give to all of you. Your truth is enough.
Oh, wow.
Take a deep breath. Your truth is enough. What if we just allowed ourselves to live from that place where our truth is enough? And yes, other people are going to be disappointed. And you know what? When I found this out, I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe this. I have a friend, she was a friend, who confessed to me that she asked me, I was first on her list to ask, when she had to dump something or do something and she needed somebody else, I was first on her list. You know why? Why? Because I was always says yes. I would always say yes. I was the yes girl, right? And she
wasn't me, by the way.
No, definitely was not Kate. Yes, no, not Kate. Different friend who's not so much of a friend anymore. Because even after this, she asked to borrow $500 for 1 month, and I said yes. That was 2019. Strangely, she hasn't kept in touch since then.
What calendar is that?
Exactly. So the amazing thing about all this is to realize that life brings us all the experiences and people that are going to challenge our boundaries so that we can find our way back to our own center, back to wholeness, back to living what it is we are here to live, to experience life more fully. Instead of those hours I anguished over what I was going to say and how I was going to handle this request, I could have been doing kinds of stuff. I could have been painting a picture. I could have been walking in nature. Right? And instead, I was sitting in my office, wondering how I was going to say no. Right? All right, so, and the other thing, so here's what happens. Every single time when you choose yourself, when your truth is enough, and you have the courage to say no, you increase your self-trust. And when you start to increase your self-trust, life is completely different. And the things you begin to attract are completely different. They're opportunities for growth and expansion and fun. And the twisted part of all this is that this adapted self that we've created is, it's not, it's not something to get rid of. It is the part of ourselves that served us greatly. And so it's about bringing that part in. Because when we start to choose ourselves, that part doesn't have a job anymore. Doesn't need to do that. Doesn't need to remind me that I don't matter. Because that's not true. I do matter. Right? So as we do that, we create true safety. So this adaptive part thinks it's keeping us safe. It thinks it's keeping us safe. That's the reason why it does what it does. But in truth, it's not. What keeps us safe is being connected and centered in the truth of who we are. Okay, and if you fail and come up short and sometimes choose the adapted self, remember to choose self-compassion, right? We're not perfect. We're not going to get it right. It is a process. It is a journey. As I said, it seems like how easy does that seem for, to have somebody ask to borrow your car? Right? It seems pretty straightforward, right? It doesn't work for you to say no. But for me, that was like one of the most difficult things to ask, right? I remember Doug Craig saying that a few months back, that the most difficult thing for him that he cannot do is he cannot return something to the store. Big, burly Doug Craig cannot return something to the store, right? So it makes no sense. Like, other people, you tell your friend what's going on, and they're like, well, why didn't you just say no? Like, what's, I don't get that. But it's because it's an internal, it's an internal issue. I don't like to, it's not a war, it's competing, it's internal competition. But we get to choose. That's why we need awareness, is to choose.
And what if that process that you went through was at work to restore you and maintain you in wholeness? It was that actual process that did that for you.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Okay, so I'm going to end with this little ditty of a poem. Often the path that is yours to walk is the exact one that you do not feel prepared to walk. Walk it anyway. Often what is rising in us feels far bigger than we feel we could possibly hold. Be the container anyway. Often our creations seem to have a wild, uncontrollable consciousness of their own. Birth them anyway. Often what is ours to do feels more like a challenge than a choice. Choose it anyway. Often what is ours to do is the very thing that intimidates us the most. Be courageous and do it anyway. And remember, your truth